After my wife died, my son threw my clothes into the snow and changed every lock on the house we built together. He sold my fishing boat for scrap metal, the same boat where I proposed to her 43 years ago. At the will reading, he smirked and said, "You get nothing, old man." Then the lawyer opened a waterproof safe no one knew existed, and my son hit the floor. Thank you so much for being here and taking a moment to listen to this story. If it resonates with you, please leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I truly read and appreciate every single one. Also, just a quick note, parts of this story have been fictionalized for storytelling and educational purposes. Any names or settings are coincidental, but the lesson behind it is very real, and I hope it is meaningful for you. The phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday night in December. I was on my hands and knees in the upstairs hallway, replacing a section of railing that had come loose from the banister. Ruth had mentioned it 3 times that week. "The screws are stripped, Art. Someone is going to lean on that and go right through." She was right. She was always right about things like that. 43 years married to a woman who noticed every loose nail, every drafty window, every creak in every floorboard. And I still could not keep up. My hands were covered in wood shavings. I had been working by the glow of a single lamp because Ruth had gone to bed early again. She said she was tired. "Just tired, Art. Stop worrying." But she had been saying that a lot lately. Tired after breakfast. Tired after her Tuesday bookkeeping shift at the marina office. Tired after walking to the mailbox and back. I told myself it was the season. December in Gloucester, Massachusetts does that to people. The cold gets into your bones and does not leave until April. I almost did not answer the phone. At that hour, it is never good news. But something made me stop. Maybe instinct. Maybe 43 years of marriage teaching a man to pay attention when the world goes quiet in a way it should not. I wiped my hands on my jeans, pushed myself up from the floor, and picked up, "Mr. Callahan." A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. The kind of careful that means someone has been trained to deliver the worst words in the English language. "This is Addison Gilbert Hospital. I am calling about your wife, Ruth Callahan." The sandpaper slipped from my knee and hit the hardwood floor. I heard it land, but the sound came from very far away, like I was already underwater. "Is she?" I started. I could not finish. My mouth would not form the question, because some part of me already knew the answer. "Mr. Callahan, I am so sorry. Your wife was brought in by ambulance at 11:15 tonight. She went into cardiac arrest. The team did everything they could, but..." A pause. The kind that stretches until you think the silence itself might kill you. "She did not make it. I am so very sorry. Massive heart failure," they told me later. Sudden. Nothing anyone could have done. She had been sitting in the living room reading, the way she did every night. A cup of chamomile tea on the side table. Her reading glasses on the tip of her nose. She put the book down, leaned back in her chair, and her heart simply stopped. By the time the ambulance arrived, Ruth Eleanor Callahan, age 68, was gone. The lamp in the hallway flickered. The railing was still loose. And Ruth, my Ruth, the woman who had noticed every loose nail in our house for 43 years, would never notice another one. I do not remember grabbing my keys. I remember the cold leather of the steering wheel under my palms. I remember the windshield wipers beating against the snow that had started falling sometime in the last hour, thick and heavy. The kind of December snow that turns Gloucester into a postcard. I remember my hands shaking on the wheel. The tremor in my right hand had been getting worse over the last 2 years. Early-stage Parkinson's, Dr. Reeves had said. Manageable. Nothing to worry about yet. But tonight, it was not just my right hand. It was both hands, both arms. My whole body trying to reject what I had just heard. Like if I shook hard enough, the words would fall out of me and not be true. The drive from 87 Eastern Point Road to Addison Gilbert Hospital takes 11 minutes on a clear night. I do not know how long it took me that night. The snow was coming down sideways off the Atlantic, and the roads along the coast were slick with black ice. I drove slowly, gripping the wheel, leaning forward to see through the white. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty. I found a spot near the emergency entrance and sat there for a long moment with the engine still running, staring at the bright fluorescent lights of the ER doors. Somewhere inside those doors, Ruth was waiting, and I was not ready. 43 years. I had loved that woman for 43 years. I had proposed to her on the deck of a fishing boat called the Blue Horizon in the summer of 1981, down on one knee on the cabin floor with a ring that cost me 3 months of hauling cod and haddock out of the North Atlantic. She had laughed and cried at the same time and said yes before I even finished asking. We got married at City Hall on a Saturday in June. Just us, 2 witnesses, and a judge who shook my hand and said, "You two look like the real thing." We were. For 43 years, we were the real thing. And now she was inside that hospital, and I was sitting in my truck in the snow, and I was not ready to say goodbye. But you never are you? No one teaches you how to do that. No one sits you down and explains what it feels like when the person who has been beside you for 4 decades is suddenly, permanently, irreversibly gone. You just have to walk through the door and find out. I turned off the engine. I opened the door. The snow hit my face, cold and sharp, and for 1 second it felt like the whole world was trying to wake me up from something. But I was already awake. This was not a dream. This was December 12th, 2023. This was Gloucester, Massachusetts. This was real. I walked toward the emergency entrance, my boots crunching on the salted pavement, my breath coming out in white clouds that the wind tore apart as fast as I could make them. The automatic doors slid open. The warmth inside hit me like a wall. Disinfectant and floor wax and something underneath that I could not name, but would never forget. 43 years, and I still was not ready. But Ruth was waiting. So I walked in. A nurse met me at the front desk. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back, and a name tag that read Megan Torres. She had the kind of eyes that told you she had done this before. Walked someone down a hallway they did not want to walk down. She did not ask me to fill out paperwork. She just looked at me and said, "Mr. Callahan, follow me." We walked down a corridor that smelled like bleach and something floral, like someone had tried to cover one smell with another and failed at both. Megan walked slowly, matching my pace. And I was grateful for that because my legs did not feel like they belonged to me anymore. Room 4. That is where they had put her. Room 4. Like it was just another appointment. Megan opened the door and stepped to the side. "Take all the time you need," she said softly. Her voice cracked on the last word, just barely, and I realized she was trying not to cry. A nurse who had probably done this 100 times was trying not to cry for a man she had never met. Somehow, that was the thing that nearly broke me right there in the doorway. I walked in alone. Ruth looked like she was sleeping. That is what everyone says, is it not? They looked peaceful. They looked like they were sleeping. But it was true. Her face was smooth and still, relaxed in a way I had not seen in months. No worry lines, no tension, just quiet. Just Ruth, with her silver hair fanned across the pillow and her hands folded on her chest. They had left her wedding ring on. I noticed that first. 43 years, that ring. I had bought it at a pawn shop in downtown Gloucester in 1981 because I could not afford a jewelry store on a fisherman's wages. Simple gold band. Thin, with a tiny scratch on one side from the first week she wore it, reaching into the engine compartment of our old Ford pickup to hand me a wrench. Battle scar, she called it. Never took it off. Not once. I reached for her hand. Still warm. That surprised me. Maybe because in the movies they are always cold. But Ruth's hand was warm. And for 1 second, just 1 second, I let myself believe this was all a terrible mistake, that she would open her eyes and say, "Art, what are you doing here at this hour? Go home and finish that railing." But she did not open her eyes. She was gone. And her hand was warm. And that was the cruelest part of all. I sat in the chair beside her bed and held her hand and cried. Not loud. Just quiet tears that rolled down my face and landed on the white hospital sheet and disappeared. I told her I was sorry. Sorry I had not fixed that railing sooner. Sorry I had not paid attention when she said she was tired. She was not just end of the day tired. She was something. Is wrong tired. And I had missed it. Sorry I had not said I love you that morning when she left for her bookkeeping shift at the marina. I had been reading the newspaper, and she had kissed the top of my head on her way out, the way she always did, and I had said, "See you tonight." Not "I love you." Just "see you tonight," like there would always be another tonight. I do not know how long I sat there. Could have been 20 minutes. Could have been 2 hours. Time does strange things when your world collapses. The door opened behind me. I did not turn around. I did not need to. I could hear the shoes, expensive, hard-soled, clicking on the tile like someone tapping a pen on a desk. The faint buzz of a phone on vibrate. "Dad." Derek's voice. Flat. No crack. No tremor. Nothing that sounded like a son who had just lost his mother. I turned. He was standing in the doorway in his work clothes. Tailored jacket. No tie. Phone in his right hand. His silver Lexus was probably parked outside next to my old truck, gleaming and spotless and worth more than I had ever spent on a vehicle in my life. He glanced at Ruth. Just a glance. The way you glance at a clock to check the time. Then he looked at me. "We need to talk about arrangements," he said. Not "how are you holding up?" Not "I cannot believe she is gone." Not "I am sorry, Dad." Arrangements. I stared at my son. My only son. And I did not recognize him. The funeral home. The service. He continued, scrolling through his phone. "I have already started making calls. We should get it scheduled before Christmas. Keep it simple. I am not worried about the details." I said quietly, "I am worried about your mother." Something moved across his face. Annoyance, maybe. The expression a man makes when a meeting is running long. Then it was gone. "She is gone, Dad. The details are all that is left." He pocketed his phone and turned toward the door. Stopped halfway. "I will call you tomorrow. We will figure out next steps." He looked at Ruth one more time. Clinical. Detached. The way a real estate agent looks at a property before listing it. Then he walked out. His shoes clicked down the hallway. The elevator chimed. The doors closed. My son left his dead mother's hospital room without shedding a single tear. I sat there holding Ruth's hand, which was cooling now, slowly. And I wondered when my son had become a stranger. Wondered if it had happened all at once or gradually, the way a boat takes on water, so slowly you do not notice until you are already sinking. As I watched Derek's Lexus pull out through the window of room 4, headlights cutting through the falling snow, I did not know that this was only the beginning. I did not know that in 4 days I would not even be allowed to set foot inside my own home. But I should have known. Because Ruth had known. She had known for 11 years. And somewhere in the dark, in a waterproof safe bolted beneath the cabin floor of a fishing boat called the Blue Horizon, the evidence of everything she had done to protect me was waiting. 4 days later, I stood at the back of Our Lady of Good Voyage Church, watching my wife's funeral from a distance. I had arrived early, 6:30 in the morning, a full hour before anyone else, because I wanted to see Ruth one more time before they closed the casket. But when I got there, it was already sealed. White roses arranged on top, a framed photo from our wedding day propped on an easel beside it. Ruth at 25, grinning in a white dress she had sewn herself because a real wedding dress cost more than we made in a month. Me in my cousin Jack's borrowed suit, 2 sizes too big in the shoulders, holding her hand like I had just won something nobody else even knew was a prize. I stood there alone in the empty church, my hand flat against the smooth wood of the casket, and I said the things I had thought of at 3 in the morning, when sleep would not come. The things that mattered. The things I had been too slow to say when she was alive. Then people started arriving, and I moved to the back pew. By 10 o'clock the church was full. Ruth had touched more lives than I had realized. Women from the marina office where she did bookkeeping. Families whose taxes she had prepared for free because they could not afford an accountant. Neighbors from Eastern Point Road who had known us for decades. Captain Sal Marino, 80 years old, sat in the third row. He had been fishing these waters since Eisenhower was president. He caught my eye and nodded once, the kind of nod that says everything without saying a word. Tommy Webb slipped into the pew beside me. He did not say anything, just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, the way he had been doing for 40 years. Derek and Brooke sat in the front row, center seats, like they had reserved them at a theater. Derek wore a black suit that probably cost more than my truck. Brooke wore a strand of pearls and a black dress that looked like it came from a magazine. Every few minutes she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I never saw actual tears. Nora sat 3 rows behind them with Ben. My daughter glanced at me once when she came in, then looked away. Not coldly, just quickly, like she could not figure out where she was supposed to land. Ben squeezed her hand. She stared straight ahead. Jamie was not there. When I had asked Derek about it on the phone the day before, he had said, "She is too young to handle this, Dad. Better she remembers Grandma the way she was." Jamie was 17, old enough to drive, old enough to hold a job, old enough to say goodbye to the woman who loved her. But Derek had decided for her. The way he decided everything. Father Daniel Reeves kept the service short. A prayer, a reading from Psalms, some words about Ruth's kindness and generosity. It was nice. Generic, but nice. The kind of service you give when you know someone a little but not enough to really capture who they were. Then Derek stood up to give the eulogy. He walked to the podium with a folded piece of paper in his hand. Printed, I noticed. Not handwritten. He smoothed it out, cleared his throat, and looked at the congregation with an expression I had seen him rehearse in the bathroom mirror when he was in high school. Somber. Composed. In control. My mother, he began, was a devoted wife and a practical woman. Practical. Ruth hated that word. Be practical, Ruth. People used to tell her when she wanted to plant a garden on a fisherman's salary. Be practical. They said when she insisted on driving 45 minutes to visit her mother in Salem every Sunday, even when gas money was tight. She would smile and do it anyway. Because Ruth was not practical. She was loving. She was stubborn. She was willing to go without, so the people she cared about did not have to. But Derek did not mention any of that. Mom would want us to honor her memory, he continued, by being realistic about what comes next, by taking care of business, by making smart decisions for the family's future. He looked directly at me for the first time, and I understood what he was really saying. Sell the house. Move on. Do not be sentimental. The rest of the eulogy blurred together. Something about cherishing memories. Something about moving forward. The words did not matter. What mattered was the performance. Every pause, every inflection had been rehearsed. This was not grief. This was a pitch. When he finished, people clapped softly. He returned to his seat. Brooke took his hand, and I stood in the back row, invisible, wondering when my son had learned to lie so well. The service ended. People filed out to the parking lot murmuring about the flowers and how strong Derek was. I walked slowly, letting the crowd thin. Tommy fell into step beside me. That was a hell of a speech, Tommy said quietly. I did not answer. Sounded like he was selling something. He was. We reached the parking lot. I was headed toward my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad. I turned. Derek was walking toward me, Brooke a few steps behind, scrolling through her phone. "We need to talk about the house," Derek said. No preamble. No "how are you holding up?" Just business. "What about it?" "It is time to sell. You cannot maintain it alone, Dad. The stairs, the yard, the roof. Your hands." He glanced at my right hand, the one that trembled. "Mom would want you to be practical." That word again. "That is my home," I said quietly. "Ruth and I bought it in 1985. Ruth is gone." His voice was flat. Not cruel exactly. Just final. Be realistic. Something cracked inside me. Not broke. Not yet. But cracked. The way ice cracks before it gives way. "I am being realistic," I said. "That house is where we raised you. Where your mother and I built everything we had. Dad." His tone sharpened. "I am trying to help you. You are getting older. The Parkinson's is getting worse. You need to downsize. I do not need your help." Derek's jaw tightened. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. "Fine. We will talk about this later. When you are thinking clearly." He turned and walked back to his Lexus. Brooke followed without looking up from her phone. Tommy stepped closer. "You okay?" I watched Derek's car pull out of the lot. Tires crunching gravel. "No," I said. "I am not." Tommy put a hand on my shoulder. "Come stay with me tonight. You should not be alone." I almost said no. Almost said I would be fine. But the truth was, I did not want to go back to that house. Not tonight. Not to the silence. Not to the railing I had finished at 2 in the morning because there was nothing else to do and no one left to do it for. "Okay," I said. We walked to our trucks, and I tried not to think about Derek's words. Tried not to think about the way he had said be realistic. Like our home, our 43 years, our life together was something that could be reduced to square footage and asking price. But I could not stop thinking about it. And as I followed Tommy's taillights through the December dark, I thought that was the worst conversation my son and I would ever have. I was wrong. The next morning, I discovered I no longer had a key to my own front door. The morning after Ruth's funeral, I woke up at 6:30 on Tommy's couch. Same time I had woken up every morning for 40 years. Body clock. Refusing to adjust even when everything else had shattered. I made coffee in Tommy's kitchen, moving quietly, the way you do in someone else's house. Left a note on the counter. Gone to the house. Back by lunch. Art. Then I got in my truck and drove to 87 Eastern Point Road. The neighborhood looked the same. Captain Salmarino was on his front porch 2 houses down, bundled in his parka, drinking coffee despite the cold. He waved. I waved back. The Kowalski's dog barked from behind their fence. Everything looked like a Tuesday morning where nothing had changed and nothing ever would. I pulled into the driveway behind Derek's Lexus. Surprised to see it this early, but not alarmed. Maybe he had stayed overnight. Maybe he wanted to talk. Really talk. Maybe I was still hoping my son would show up as a person instead of a business plan. I walked up the front steps. The ones I had built in 1989. The ones I had repaired a dozen times since. I pulled out my key. The same key I had carried for 38 years. Worn smooth on one edge, and slid it into the lock. It did not turn. I tried again. Jiggled it. Pulled it out. Checked it. Tried a third time. Nothing. That is when I noticed the deadbolt. New. Brass. Shinier than the rest of the hardware, like a gold tooth in a row of old fillings. He had changed the locks on my house. I stood there staring at that new deadbolt like it had fallen from outer space. This was my house. My door. My 38 years of walking through this door after long days on the water, smelling Ruth's cooking before I even got my boots off. I knocked. Footsteps inside. The door opened and Derek stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, coffee mug in hand, looking at me the way you look at someone selling something you do not want. "What are you doing here?" he said. This is my house, Derek. No. Flat. Final. It is not. He did not invite me in. You do not live here anymore, Dad. I am selling the house. I could see past him into the hallway. Ruth's reading chair by the window. The bookshelf I had built her. The harbor painting we bought at a yard sale because Ruth said it looked like our first apartment. All of it still there. We checked the deed, Derek continued. Mom transferred it in 2021. Sole ownership. Her name only. Which means it is part of her estate. Which means I inherit it. Which means he gestured at me the way you gesture at furniture you are moving out. You do not live here anymore. Ruth had transferred the deed without telling me. Derek reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. $300. Should cover a motel for a couple weeks while you figure things out. I looked at the cash. My son offering me $300 to leave the home his mother and I had bought in 1985, with every penny we had saved from 12 years of fishing and bookkeeping and doing without. I am not taking your money, I said quietly. Suit yourself. He started closing the door. Derek. Wait. He stopped, door half closed. Dad. You are trespassing. Legally, I could call the police, but I am trying to be decent. Take the money. Get a room. He pushed the door shut. The new deadbolt slid into place. Brass on brass. A sound I had never heard in my own house before. I stood on my front porch. The porch I had rebuilt twice. The porch where Ruth and I used to sit on summer evenings with iced tea and the sound of the ocean 3 blocks away. Then, I saw the boxes. 3 of them. Cardboard. Taped shut. Sitting at the edge of the driveway near the street like trash waiting for pickup. Snow collecting on top. A thin white layer that made them look discarded and forgotten. I walked over. Opened the first one. My clothes. Jeans. Flannel shirts. Work boots. Thrown in without folding. Like someone had grabbed armfuls from the closet and dumped them. Second box. Tools. My fishing knife. My tackle box. The hand-carved lure kit Ruth had given me for my 65th birthday. Heavy, carelessly packed. Metal shifting against metal. Third box. Photos. Albums. Loose pictures. Frames. And on top, a black trash bag. I opened it. Our wedding photo. The one that had hung in the hallway for 38 years. Ruth in her homemade dress. Me in Cousin Jack's borrowed suit. Both of us grinning like we had won the lottery. The frame was cracked. The glass was broken. He had thrown it away like garbage. I pulled it out carefully, shook off the broken glass. Ruth's face smiled up at me. Young and hopeful. And so happy it hurt. Mr. Callahan, I turned. Captain Sal was standing at the edge of his yard, staring at me and the boxes. His face was pale. What is going on? He said. I did not know how to explain that my son had just locked me out of my own house the morning after burying my wife. I am just getting some things, I said. My voice caught. Sal's eyes moved from me to the boxes to Derek's Lexus. His mouth tightened. This is not right. No. It is not. He pulled out his phone. I am taking pictures. For the record, I did not stop him. I loaded the 3 boxes into the bed of my truck. Did not look at the house. Did not look at the windows to see if Derek was watching. Just loaded the boxes. Set the wedding photo on the passenger seat beside me. The photo my son had thrown away like it meant nothing, and started the engine. As I pulled away from 87 Eastern Point Road, the house Ruth and I had filled with 43 years of everything that mattered, I did not look in the rearview mirror. I could not, but I made Ruth a promise. I did not know how, I did not know when, but I would not let him win. I had been sleeping in the room above Tommy Webb's dock office for 3 nights. Small room, low ceiling, single bed that creaked when I rolled over. A window that looked out over Gloucester Harbor. Every morning I woke to the sound of waves slapping against the pilings and the smell of salt and diesel fuel and old rope. Every morning, for about 5 seconds, I forgot. Forgot Ruth was gone. Forgot Derek had locked me out. Forgot I was a 70-year-old man living above a dock office with everything I owned in 3 cardboard boxes. Then reality came back. Heavy as an anchor dragging bottom. Tommy never asked how long I would stay. He just made coffee every morning, extra strong, black, no sugar, the way I had been drinking it for 50 years. And left it on the desk, downstairs, with the newspaper folded beside it. "You are staying as long as you need," he had said that first night when I showed up with my truck and my boxes and nothing else. "The room is not much, but the roof does not leak, and the heat works." That was Tommy. He had never been a man of many words. We had met in 1983, on a fishing trawler, called the Northern Star. I was the captain. He was the new deckhand, 27 years old, strong as a mule and twice as stubborn. We fished together for 15 years, before Tommy's knees gave out and he took over managing the dock. His wife Ellen had died 4 years ago. Stomach cancer. I had driven him to chemotherapy every Tuesday for 7 months. We had sat together in the hospital waiting room playing cards and not talking about the thing we were both thinking about. You do not forget friendships like that. You do not forget a man who sits with you in silence when silence is the only honest thing left. So when I showed up at his door with 3 boxes and a broken wedding photo, Tommy did not ask questions. He just opened the door wider and said, "Come on in." On Saturday morning, December 14th, I finally opened the boxes. I had been avoiding them. Did not want to see my life reduced to cardboard. But Tommy had gone to the marine supply store, and the room was too quiet, and I needed something to do with my hands. First box. Tools. My fishing knife, 40 years old, handle worn smooth from my grip. My tackle box, rusted at the hinges. The hand-carved lure kit Ruth had given me for my 65th birthday. I ran my thumb over the wooden lures and set the box aside. Throat tight. Second box. Clothes. Jeans. Flannels. Thermal shirts. Work boots. Everything smelled like cedar and salt, like our bedroom closet, like home. I folded them slowly, one by one, and stacked them on the bed. It took a long time, not because there were many clothes, but because every shirt carried something. The red flannel I wore the day Jamie caught her first striped bass. The gray thermal Ruth had patched at the elbow 3 times because I refused to throw it away. Third box. Photos. I pulled out the wedding album. Ruth, in that white dress, she had sewn herself because a real wedding dress was out of the question. Me in Jack's borrowed suit, both of us grinning outside the courthouse. I turned the pages. Our first apartment above the bait shop on Main Street. Ruth pregnant with Derek. Laughing at something I had said. One hand on her belly. Ruth pregnant with Nora. 2 years later, standing in the garden of our new house on Eastern Point Road, with dirt on her knees and a tomato plant in each hand. I closed the album. Could not look anymore. At the bottom of the box, beneath loose photographs and a stack of Christmas cards Ruth had kept from every year since 1982, I found something I did not expect. A ledger. Small brown leather cover. The kind you could buy at any office supply store. Ruth's handwriting on the first page, neat and precise the way it always was. She had been a bookkeeper for 30 years. Numbers were her language the way wood and rope were mine. I opened it expecting household accounts, grocery budgets, utility payments. The ordinary arithmetic of a life, lived carefully. The first pages were exactly that. Monthly expenses. Income from her bookkeeping clients. Property tax payments. Insurance premiums. Ordinary. Predictable. Ruth. But the last page was different. The handwriting was smaller, tighter, like she had been writing in a hurry or did not want anyone reading over her shoulder. At the top of the page, 3 letters and a city. PH. Boston. Below that, A phone number. And beneath the phone number, in Ruth's careful script, a sentence that made me stop breathing. If the tide turns, find her. She knows everything. I turned the ledger over. On the inside of the back cover, in even smaller writing, Ruth had added one more line. My dearest Art, if you are reading this, find PH. She knows everything. Trust her the way you trusted me. I sat on the floor of that small room above the dock office, holding my dead wife's ledger, reading words she had written for me to find after she was gone. The waves slapped the pilings below. A gull screamed somewhere over the harbor. The room smelled like salt and coffee, and the faintest trace of the cedar from my clothes, the smell of our closet, the smell of home. Ruth had left me something. Not just a ledger. A trail. I heard Tommy's truck pull into the dock lot downstairs. His boots on the stairs. The door opened. He took one look at me on the floor, surrounded by photos and albums and the open ledger, and did not say anything, just sat down on the edge of the bed. You need a lawyer, he said finally. I shook my head. I do not even know where to start. Tommy nodded toward the ledger in my hands. What is that? I showed him the last page. PH. Boston. If the tide turns, find her. She knows everything. Tommy read it twice. Looked at me. Ruth left you a phone number. She left me more than that. Call her, Tommy said. Monday morning. I looked at the ledger again. At Ruth's handwriting. At the phone number I had never seen before. Written by a woman who had apparently been planning for something I did not yet understand. Okay, I said. Monday. That Sunday night I sat at Tommy's desk long after he had gone to bed, turning the ledger over and over in my hands. If the tide turns, what had Ruth known? What had she been preparing for? The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. The harbor was black and still. The lighthouse on 10-Pound Island swept its beam across the water every 12 seconds, steady and patient, the way it had done for 100 years. Ruth had planned something. I did not know what, did not know why she had not told me. But Monday morning I would find out. I owed her that much. On January 15th, 2024, 5 weeks after Ruth died, I drove to Boston. Tommy had pushed me out the door that morning with a thermos of coffee and a look that said, if you do not go now, you never will. The drive took an hour and a half. I followed Route 128 south to the interstate, through the gray January landscape of the North Shore, past frozen marshes and bare trees and highway overpasses streaked with road salt. My hands trembled on the wheel the whole way. Not just the Parkinson's. Something else. Fear, maybe. Or hope. I was not sure which was worse. Patricia Harmon's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower on Atlantic Avenue overlooking Boston Harbor. The elevator opened onto a reception area with polished marble floors and framed diplomas on the walls. Yale Law, Massachusetts Bar Association, American College of Trust and Estate Council. Everything about it said expensive, and I almost turned around. I could not afford expensive. I was a retired fisherman sleeping above a dock office with 3 boxes of belongings and no access to my own house. But the receptionist had already seen me. Mr. Callahan? I nodded. Miss Harmon is expecting you. Go right in. Expecting me. I had not called ahead. Had not made an appointment. I had just shown up at 9 in the morning because Tommy had told me to, and because Ruth's handwriting in that ledger had told me to, and because I had nothing left to lose. The door to the inner office opened, and a woman stepped out. Mid-50s. Silver hair cut short. Reading glasses on a chain. Charcoal suit. She moved with the kind of calm authority that comes from 30 years of practice and a wall full of diplomas that prove you have earned it. Mr. Callahan, she said, extending her hand. I am Patricia Harmon. I have been expecting you. I shook her hand. Confused. You have? Please sit. She gestured to the chairs across from her desk. I sat. She sat. She folded her hands on the desk and looked at me with something close to sympathy, but sharper than that. Respect, maybe. The way you look at someone who has been through something terrible and is still standing. Your wife and I have been working together for 11 years, she said. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Ripples spreading outward, changing everything. 11 years, I said slowly. Patricia opened a file on her desk. Thick, organized. Tab dividers, with dates going back more than a decade. Ruth came to me in 2013. She had discovered that your son Derek owed significant debts to multiple creditors. She found out while doing bookkeeping for Marina Supply Company downtown. Derek owed them $22,000. That led her to investigate further. She slid a stack of papers across the desk. Receipts, bank statements, handwritten notes in Ruth's precise script. Each one dated, categorized, annotated. The work of a bookkeeper who understood that numbers do not lie even when people do. 2009. Check number 4417. $30,000. Business opportunity. Derek never repaid. 2012. Cash withdrawal. $15,000. Emergency. Derek's car repossessed 3 months later. 2016. Bank transfer. $10,000. Medical bills for Brooke. Brooke was never sick. 2019. Check. $7,000. Restaurant investment. Restaurant never opened. 2022. Wire transfer. $8,000. Credit card debt. Minimum payments only. I read through them twice. Loans Ruth had given Derek over 13 years. Everyone. Documented. Everyone with Ruth's notes explaining what Derek had claimed the money was for and what it had actually been used for. That is over $70,000, Patricia said quietly. None of it repaid. None of it even acknowledged. My throat was dry. I did not know. She did not tell you. Patricia's voice was careful. She said if you knew, you would try to help him. Give him more money. More chances. She could not let that happen. Because helping Derek meant enabling Derek. Patricia pulled up a spreadsheet on her computer and turned the screen toward me. Ruth Eleanor Callahan. Estate summary. Real property. 87 Eastern Point Road, Gloucester, Massachusetts. $700,000. Deed transferred to Ruth E. Callahan. Sole ownership. March 2021. Life insurance. Northwestern Mutual. $600,000. Beneficiary split. $400,000 Arthur Callahan. $200,000 Jamie Callahan Trust. Savings accounts. 3 institutions. $220,000. Investment portfolio. Fidelity. $180,000. Trust fund for Jamie Callahan. $100,000. Total estate value. $1,800,000. I could not speak. Could not process what I was seeing. Ruth had saved and invested nearly $2 million. The woman who clipped coupons and drove a 12-year-old Honda and mended my shirts instead of buying new ones had built a fortune. How? I finally managed. 30 years of bookkeeping, Patricia said. She worked for 11 clients at various points. Every paycheck went into accounts in her name only. She invested carefully. Index funds, bonds, certificates of deposit. Nothing flashy, just steady, disciplined, patient growth. Patricia paused. She never told Derek. Never told you. Because she knew Derek would find a way to take it. I thought about Ruth coming home from work, tired. Always tired lately. I had thought she was just getting older. I had thought the bookkeeping was just something to keep her busy in retirement. She had been building a fortress. The house deed. Patricia continued. Transferred in 2021. You signed the papers. Ruth told you it was for tax purposes. I remembered. Vaguely. Sitting at the kitchen table, Ruth sliding documents in front of me. Just a formality, Art. Saves us on property taxes. I had signed without reading because I trusted her. Because in 43 years of marriage, she had never given me a reason not to. It saved more than taxes, Patricia said. It saved your home. Derek cannot touch it. It is not part of the marital estate. It belongs to you, through Ruth's will. She opened another folder. There is also the matter of the power of attorney Derek filed in December. He claimed you were incompetent due to Parkinson's disease and grief. He forged your signature. I felt like I had been hit in the chest. He forged. We have proof. The signature analysis came back last week. It is not yours. Patricia leaned forward, which means Derek committed fraud, which means your wife was playing chess while your son was playing checkers. She closed the file. Ruth also set aside a $60,000 defense fund for legal fees. For your protection. In case Derek tried exactly what he is trying, I sat back in the chair. Overwhelmed. Ruth had known. For 11 years, she had known what Derek would do, and she had spent a decade quietly, carefully, methodically building a wall between her son and her husband. Why did she not tell me? I said. Patricia's expression softened. Because you would have tried to fix it. Tried to save Derek. And Ruth knew some people cannot be saved, Arthur. They can only be contained. I left Patricia's office at noon, walking into the January cold with a folder full of documents and a head full of numbers and revelations. Ruth had saved nearly $2 million. She had transferred the deed. She had documented every loan. She had hired a lawyer. She had set aside money for my defense. For 11 years, she had been 3 steps ahead. And I had no idea. As I sat in my truck, key in the ignition, staring at the folder on the passenger seat, my hands were shaking, not from the Parkinson's, from something else. Gratitude. Grief. Awe. Ruth had known. She had always known. And she had protected me even when it meant carrying the weight entirely alone. But one question burned. Patricia had said Ruth left evidence somewhere only I would understand. A place connected to the beginning of our story. I gripped the steering wheel and looked east, toward the coast, toward Gloucester, toward the harbor where a 38-foot fishing boat called the Blue Horizon sat at the end of Tommy's dock, waiting. I had not been on the water since the morning Ruth told me she felt a tightness in her chest. That was October. 2 months. And a lifetime ago. Now it was the 3rd week of January. And the harbor was frozen at the edges, thin sheets of gray ice creeping out from the pilings, like the sea was trying to hold on to something it could not keep. Tommy drove me to the Gloucester Marine Railway at 6 in the morning. The sky was the color of wet cement. Neither of us said much. He parked his truck near the fuel dock, and we walked along the main pier until I saw her. The Blue Horizon. She was tied to the 4th slip on the east side, her hull scratched and dull, her paint peeling in long strips like sunburned skin. A tarp covered the wheelhouse, half pulled loose by the wind. The name on her stern was barely readable. Blue Horizon, Gloucester, M.A. I built that boat in 1980. 37 feet of white oak and marine plywood. Every plank cut by hand in my father's garage on Bass Avenue. It took me 14 months. My father helped with the keel. My Uncle Raymond welded the engine mounts. Ruth sanded every surface twice because she said I never got the grain smooth enough. She was right. She was always right about things like that. I proposed to her on that boat. August 9th, 1981. We were anchored off Thatcher Island, and the sun was going down behind the twin lighthouses. I had the ring and a coffee can under the helm seat because I could not think of a better hiding place. She laughed when I pulled it out. She laughed and cried at the same time, and she said yes before I even finished the question. Now the boat looked abandoned. Derek had tried to sell her twice. Once in 2022 to a scrap dealer in New Bedford for $8,000. Ruth blocked the sale because the title was still in both our names. The second time was 3 weeks after Ruth died. A broker from Salem called Tommy, asking about the vessel's condition. Tommy told him the boat was not for sale. The broker never called back. I climbed aboard carefully. My left hand shook against the rail, and my right knee popped on the second step. Tommy stayed on the dock and watched. I pulled the tarp off the wheelhouse and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Salt, diesel, old wood, and something faintly sweet, like dried lavender. Ruth used to hang small bundles of lavender from the cabin hooks to keep the mildew away. I could still see the faded purple stems tied with kitchen string. Patricia had told me to look beneath the helm console. She said Ruth installed something in 2019, and only 2 people knew about it. Ruth and Patricia. I knelt on the cabin floor and ran my fingers along the bottom edge of the console. The wood was smooth, original. Then I felt it. A small metal latch, recessed into the panel, painted over to match the surrounding grain. I pressed it. A click. A section of the panel swung open on a hidden hinge, revealing a steel box bolted to the frame. It was the size of a shoebox, dark gray, with a combination lock. The combination was our wedding date, 080981, August 9th, 1981. I turned the dial 3 times, and the lock released with a clean, sharp sound. Inside the box, I found 4 items. The first was a large manila envelope, sealed with red wax and stamped with Patricia's initials, PH. I did not open it. Patricia had told me not to. She said it contained the original deed to 87 Eastern Point Road, the original life insurance documents, and a notarized letter from Ruth declaring Derek's power of attorney fraudulent. The envelope was evidence. It was meant for the reading. The second item was a smaller white envelope with my name written on it in Ruth's handwriting. The letters were careful, steady, the way she always wrote when something mattered. I held it for a long time. My hands trembled, and I could not tell if it was the Parkinson's or something else entirely. I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. Her handwriting filled both sides. The letter began, "My dearest Art, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the tide has turned the way I always feared it would." She wrote that she had known about Derek's debts since 2011. She found the first loan statement in a jacket he left at the house during Thanksgiving. Over the next 12 years, she tracked every dollar, every lie, every forged signature. She did not tell me because she knew I would confront him, and she said I had too good a heart to see what he had become. She wrote about the house. She transferred the deed into her name in 2021, not to cut me out, but to protect me. If the deed was in her name, Derek could not pressure me into signing it over. She planned everything with Patricia, the insurance policies, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, the trust for Jamie. The last paragraph said, "You gave me 43 years on the water, Art. You gave me a life I never expected and never deserved. Now I am giving you the only thing I have left. The truth. Use it. Fight for what is yours. And when it is over, take the boat out one more time. Anchor off Thatcher Island. Watch the sun go down behind the lighthouses. And know that I am there with you." I folded the letter and pressed it against my chest. I sat on the cabin floor of the blue horizon for a long time. The boat rocked gently in the winter current. I could hear the ice cracking against the hull and the gulls calling somewhere above the fog. The third item in the box was Ruth's engagement ring. The same ring from the coffee can. She must have placed it there years ago, long before she got sick. The gold band was thin and worn. The small diamond, still bright. I slipped it into my coat pocket next to my heart. The fourth item was a sealed envelope addressed to Jamie. It said, "For Jamie Callahan, to be opened at the reading. With all my love, Grandma Ruth." I closed the steel box. I locked it again. I climbed off the boat and stood on the dock next to Tommy. He looked at my face and did not ask a single question. He simply put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Let us go get some coffee." We walked back to his truck in silence. The harbor was still and cold. A single lobster boat moved slowly through the channel, its engine humming low. I held the white envelope in my left hand and Ruth's ring in my right pocket And for the first time since she died, I did not feel completely alone. But I knew what was coming. Derek had filed a motion to seize the Blue Horizon as part of the estate. His lawyer sent the papers to the harbor master on January 15th. Tommy showed me the notice that morning before we left. We had 17 days before the court date. 17 days to save the boat, where I proposed to the only woman I ever loved. I read Ruth's letter 7 times that night. Tommy had gone to bed around 9. I could hear him snoring through the thin wall of the dock office, a steady low rumble like a diesel engine idling at the mooring. The space heater in my room glowed orange in the corner, and the window rattled every time the wind came off the harbor. I sat on the edge of the cot with the letter open on my knees, and I read it again from the beginning. Each time I found something new. Not new words. The words did not change, but the meaning behind them shifted, the way light shifts on the water when the clouds move. The first time I read it, I cried. The second time, I felt anger so hot it burned the back of my throat. By the 7th time, I felt something I had not felt since the night she died. I felt her presence, not a ghost, not a memory, something closer than that, as if she were sitting beside me on that cot, her hand on my arm, her voice in my ear saying, "Pay attention. Art." I wrote this for a reason. She had known about Derek for 12 years. 12 years of silence. 12 years of watching our son borrow money he never intended to return, forge signatures on documents he did not understand, and lie to my face at every holiday dinner while she sat across the table and said nothing. I tried to imagine the weight of that, carrying a secret that heavy for that long. Smiling at Thanksgiving. Wrapping Christmas presents. Kissing me goodnight, while knowing that the boy we raised together had become someone neither of us recognized. The letter explained everything in order, the way Ruth always did. She was a bookkeeper for 31 years. She believed in columns and rows, debits on the left, credits on the right, every number accounted for, every dollar traced to its source. She started tracking Derek's debts in 2011, after she found a loan statement from Marina Supply Company in the pocket of his jacket. He had borrowed $12,000 using our home address as collateral reference. He never told us. He never paid it back. Over the next 12 years, she documented 13 separate loans, cash withdrawals, and forged authorizations totaling more than $70,000. She kept copies of every receipt, every bank statement, every forged signature. She stored them in 3 places: the ledger in the cardboard box, the steel safe on the Blue Horizon, and a fireproof filing cabinet in Patricia Harmon's office in Boston. She wrote that she considered telling me in 2015. She almost did. It was a Sunday in March, and we were sitting on the back porch watching the harbor fog roll in. She said she opened her mouth to speak, but then I told her a story about a whale I saw off Halibut Point that morning, and she decided the truth could wait one more day. One more day became one more year, then 5, then 10. By 2019, she had built the full plan. She transferred the house deed into her name in 2021. She restructured the life insurance policies to name me as primary beneficiary for $400,000 and Jamie's trust for $200,000. She opened a separate savings account at Rockport Savings Bank under her name alone, depositing small amounts every month until it reached $220,000. She moved $180,000 into a diversified investment portfolio managed by a firm in Cambridge. She set aside $60,000 in a defense fund, held in escrow by Patricia, specifically for legal fees if Derek challenged the will. Every number in the letter matched what Patricia had shown me in her office. Ruth had given me the spreadsheet version in Boston. Now, she was giving me the story behind the numbers. The why, the how, the when. The hardest paragraph to read was near the end of the first page. She wrote about Jamie. She said Jamie was the reason she kept going. She said she watched our granddaughter grow up with Derek's anger and Brooke's indifference, and it broke her heart in a way that no ledger could record. She set up the $100,000 trust for Jamie because she wanted her to have a choice. college, a trade, a small business, whatever she wanted. The money would be available when Jamie turned 18, managed by Patricia until then. She wrote, "Jamie is the best of both of us, Art. She has your stubbornness and my patience. She has your hands and my eyes. Do not let Derek take her future the way he tried to take ours." I set the letter down and stared at the wall. A framed photograph of Tommy and Ellen hung above the space heater. They were standing on the deck of the Northern Star. Both of them young. Both of them laughing. Tommy had told me once that the hardest part of losing Ellen was not the grief. It was the silence afterward. The empty chair. The cold side of the bed. The way mornings felt like punishment because you had to wake up and remember all over again. I understood that now. I picked up the letter and read the second page one more time. The final paragraph was different from the rest. It was not about money or documents or legal strategy. It was personal. It was Ruth speaking directly to me. Not as a bookkeeper, not as a planner, but as my wife. She wrote, "I know you will be angry with me for keeping this secret. I know you will sit somewhere cold and lonely and wonder why I did not trust you enough to tell you the truth. But I did trust you. Art, I trusted you with my whole life. I just did not trust you to stay quiet. You would have confronted him. You would have fought him face to face, and he would have turned it against you. So I fought him my way, with numbers, with documents, with patience. And I won." She signed the letter the way she signed every card she ever gave me. "Yours, always and forever, Ruth." I folded the paper carefully along its original creases. I slid it back into the white envelope and placed it inside my coat pocket, next to her engagement ring. Then I turned off the space heater, pulled the wool blanket over my shoulders, and lay on the cot in the dark. The wind howled outside. The dock creaked and groaned under the weight of the ice. Somewhere in the harbor, a buoy bell rang once, then twice, then fell silent. I closed my eyes and made a decision. Tomorrow morning, I would call Patricia Harmon and tell her I was ready. Ready to fight. Ready to protect what Ruth had built. Ready to save the blue horizon before Derek's court date in 17 days. And I would find a way to reach Jamie. Because Ruth was right. Jamie was the best of both of us. And I was not going to let anyone take her future away. The call came on a Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. I was sitting at the small table in Tommy's dock office, eating a bowl of clam chowder that Sal Marino's wife had left on the step that morning. She had been bringing food every other day since the funeral. Chowder, cornbread, beef stew so thick, the spoon stood up on its own. She never knocked. She just left it with a paper napkin and walked away. My phone buzzed on the table. I did not recognize the number. The area code was 978. Local. I picked it up and said hello. For a moment there was nothing on the other end, just breathing, quick and nervous, like someone deciding whether to speak or hang up. Then a voice. Quiet. Young. Barely above a whisper. "Grandpa Art?" "It is me. Jamie." I set the spoon down. My hand trembled against the table, and I pressed my palm flat to stop it. I had not heard her voice since Thanksgiving, 7 weeks ago. She sat next to me that night and told me about a science project, a model of ocean currents using colored dye and salt water. She said she wanted to be a marine biologist. Ruth squeezed my knee under the table, and I knew exactly what that squeeze meant. It meant, she is going to be okay. "Jamie, where are you calling from?" "A friend's phone." "Megan's. I am at her house. Dad does not know I am calling." Her voice cracked on the last word. Not just fear. Something heavier. The sound of a 17-year-old carrying a weight she should never have been asked to lift. "Are you safe?" I asked. "Yes. But he talks, Grandpa. He talks to Brooke at night when he thinks I am asleep, and I hear everything through the vent in my bedroom floor." I leaned forward. The dock office smelled like diesel and old rope. Outside, a gull screamed once and went silent. "What does he say?" She paused. Then she spoke in a low, steady voice. The kind that comes from rehearsing something over and over before you say it out loud. "He says the house is worth $700,000. He is going to sell it before probate court even opens the will. He told Brooke he already has a buyer, a developer from Manchester who wants to tear it down and build condos. He says once the house is sold, he will take the insurance money and the savings and move to Florida. He said you will never see a cent." I closed my eyes. The wind pushed against the window, and the glass hummed in its frame. He also said something about the boat. He filed papers to take the Blue Horizon. He wants to sell it to a scrap yard in New Bedford. He said it is worthless junk, and nobody would fight him for it. "Jamie, how do you know all of this?" "Because I recorded it." The words hung in the air. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. "You recorded it," I repeated, 3 times. On Megan's phone. Dad checks mine every night. He goes through my messages and my call history and my photos. He started doing that the week after Grandma died. So Megan gave me her old phone, the one with the cracked screen. I keep it in my backpack inside a zippered pocket behind my math textbook. She spoke faster now. The words tumbled out, like water, through a broken dam. The first recording is from January 14th. He was on the phone with his lawyer, a man named Garrett. He told Garrett to file a motion to seize the boat and block any claims you might make on the house. The second recording is from January 18th. He was talking to Brooke in the kitchen. He said, "The old man has Parkinson's. No judge is going to give him anything. We just have to wait him out." The third recording is from 2 days ago. He was drunk. He told Brooke he was going to visit the harbor master and demand the boat be released to him immediately. I stood up from the table. My knees ached. My left hand shook, but something inside me was steady, deep and solid, like the oak keel of the Blue Horizon. "Jamie, listen carefully. Do not delete those recordings. Do not tell your father you called me. Keep Megan's phone hidden exactly where it is. Can you do that?" "Yes. I need you to send those recordings to an email address. Patricia Harmon. She is a lawyer in Boston. Your grandmother hired her." "I know who Patricia is," Jamie said. "Grandma told me about her." I stopped breathing. The room went very quiet. I could hear the tide pulling at the pilings beneath the dock. "Grandma told you?" "Last summer. In August. We were sitting on the porch, and she gave me a cup of tea and said, 'Jamie, someday you might need to be brave for your grandfather. When that day comes, find Patricia Harmon in Boston.'" I thought she was being dramatic. Now I understand. Ruth. Even from the grave, she was still 2 steps ahead. "Send the recordings tonight," I said. "Use Megan's phone. Delete the sent email from the outbox, so there is no trace. I already have Patricia's email. Grandma wrote it on a piece of paper and told me to memorize it. Then she made me burn the paper in the backyard fire pit. I almost laughed. I almost cried. I did neither. I just stood in that cold dock office and felt something I had not felt in weeks. Hope. "Your grandmother would be very proud of you, Jamie." "I know," she whispered. "She told me I have your stubbornness and her patience." The line went quiet. She sniffled once. "I have to go. Megan's mom is calling us for dinner. I will send the recordings tonight. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too. Be careful." The call ended. I set the phone on the table and sat back down. The chowder was cold. The cornbread was untouched. Tommy came in 10 minutes later, stamping snow off his boots. He looked at my face and stopped in the doorway. "Something happened," he said. Jamie called. She has 3 recordings. Derek on the phone with his lawyer. Derek talking to Brooke about selling everything. Derek saying, "I would never see a cent." Tommy sat down across from me. He looked at me the way he looked at the ocean before a storm. Calm. Steady. Ready. Then, we have him, Tommy said. Not yet. But we are getting close. Outside, the harbor was dark. The buoy bell rang slow and steady in the distance. Somewhere out there, the blue horizon rocked in her slip, holding Ruth's secrets beneath the helm. And somewhere on Eastern Point Road, a 17-year-old girl with her grandmother's eyes was sending 3 recordings to a lawyer in Boston. The tide was turning. I could feel it. Patricia called me the next morning at 7:15. I was already awake. I had not slept more than 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Jamie's whisper through the phone, and every time I opened them, I saw the dark ceiling of the dock office and the orange glow of the space heater in the corner. Arthur, Patricia said, I received the recordings. All 3. I have been listening to them since 5 this morning. Her voice was different from the last time we spoke. In her office, she had been calm, measured, professional. Now, there was an edge to it. The kind of edge that comes when a lawyer finds exactly what she needs and knows the other side, has no idea what is coming. How bad is it? I asked. For Derek? It is devastating. She asked me to come to Boston. Not next week. Not in a few days. Today, she said the recordings changed everything, and we needed to build the legal response before Derek's attorney filed the boat seizure motion, which was due in 11 days. Tommy drove me again. We left Gloucester at 8:30 and arrived at Patricia's office on the 14th floor at 10:15. The receptionist brought coffee in white ceramic cups. Patricia was already sitting at the conference table with a laptop open and a yellow legal pad filled with notes in small, precise handwriting. She played the first recording without saying a word. Derek's voice filled the room. I had not heard my son speak since the funeral, and the sound of him hit me in the chest like a fist. He was on the phone with his lawyer, a man named Garrett Whitfield. Derek's tone was sharp and impatient, the way he sounded when he was cornered. File the motion on the boat this week, Derek said. I want it released to me before the old man even knows what happened. And the house. I need that listing agreement signed before probate opens. My buyer in Manchester will not wait forever. Garrett's voice was quieter, more cautious. Derek, if the will names your father as a beneficiary, we cannot sell the property without court approval. There is no will, Derek said. My mother never made one. I checked. Patricia paused the recording and looked at me. He checked, she said. He searched the house. He searched Ruth's files. He even called 2 estate attorneys in Gloucester, asking if Ruth Callahan had filed a will. But Ruth never filed locally. She filed everything through my office in Boston. He never thought to look outside of Essex County. She played the second recording. This one was harder to hear. Derek and Brooke were in the kitchen. I could hear the clink of glasses and the hum of the refrigerator. Derek's voice was looser, slower. He had been drinking. The old man has Parkinson's, Derek said. You have seen his hands. He cannot even hold a coffee cup straight. No judge is going to give him control of anything. We just have to wait him out. 6 months. Maybe a year. He will end up in a facility somewhere, and the whole estate falls to me as next of kin. Brooke laughed. It was a short, dry sound, like a match striking. And what about Jamie? She asked. What about her? Derek said. She is 17. She does not get a say. I stared at the laptop screen. The audio waveform pulsed green and flat, like a heartbeat monitor. Tommy sat beside me with his arms crossed and his jaw tight. He did not say a word, but I could see the vein in his temple. Patricia played the third recording. This one was the shortest. January 21st. Derek was drunk. His words slurred together, and I could hear the television in the background. I am going down to the harbor tomorrow, he told Brooke. I am going to tell that harbor master to release the boat, or I will have him removed. That piece of junk is mine. Everything is mine. The house, the boat, the money, all of it. The old man built nothing. My mother built it. And she is gone. And I am her son. Patricia stopped the recording and closed the laptop. She folded her hands on the table and looked at me. Arthur, here is what we have. 3 recordings. Derek admitting he plans to sell the house before probate. Derek admitting he believes there is no will. Derek stating he intends to seize the boat. Derek calling you incapable because of your medical condition. And Derek confirming his belief that the entire estate belongs to him. She pulled a document from a folder. It was a single page with a red header. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recordings, she said. Jamie was present in the home during at least 2 of these conversations. She is a party to the environment in which the statements were made. The recordings are admissible. She turned the legal pad toward me. On it, she had written a list of 5 items in her small handwriting. Here is what I am going to do. First, I will file a counter motion to block the boat seizure. The Blue Horizons title is jointly held. Derek has no unilateral claim. Second, I will file a petition to open probate immediately and present Ruth's will. Third, I will submit the recordings as evidence of Derek's intent to defraud the estate. Fourth, I will request a temporary restraining order preventing Derek from selling, transferring, or encumbering any estate property. Fifth, I will file a formal challenge to the forged power of attorney using the signature analysis Ruth commissioned in 2022. She looked at me across the table. Her eyes were steady and sharp, the way Ruth's eyes looked when she balanced a ledger and every number fell into place. Derek thinks he is fighting a 70-year-old man with shaking hands, Patricia said. He has no idea he is fighting his mother. I nodded. I could not speak. My throat was tight, and my hands were trembling on the table. Tommy put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. Patricia stood and walked to the window. The Boston skyline stretched out below, gray and cold under a January sky. She turned back to me. The will reading is scheduled for June 20th. That gives us 5 months to build an airtight case. Derek will not see it coming. Not the will. Not the recordings. Not the trust for Jamie. None of it. She paused, and then said something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Ruth did not just plan for her death, Arthur. She planned for your survival. I drove home with Tommy in silence. The highway was salted and wet. The sun broke through the clouds somewhere near Rockport, and for a few minutes the ocean turned silver along the coast. I watched it from the passenger window and thought about Ruth sitting at her desk in the upstairs bedroom, working late into the night with her reading glasses and her calculator and her careful handwriting, building a fortress out of numbers, protecting me from a storm she knew was coming long before I ever saw the clouds. The envelope arrived on February 10th, a Saturday. Tommy brought it up from the mailbox at the bottom of the dock road and handed it to me without a word. He had that look on his face, the same look he wore when a storm warning came over the marine radio and you had 30 minutes to tie everything down. The return address said Addison Gilbert Hospital, Billing Department, 128 Prospect Street, Gloucester, Massachusetts. I opened it at the table with a butter knife because my hands were shaking too badly to tear the seal. The bill was $38,412. Emergency cardiac care. Intensive care unit. 2 nights. Physician services. Lab work. Radiology. Pharmacy. Ambulance transport. Every line item was printed in small black type on 3 pages of white paper. At the bottom of the 3rd page, in bold red letters, it said, Amount due, $38,412. Payment due within 60 days. Guarantor, Derek R. Callahan. Derek had signed as guarantor the night Ruth was admitted. I remembered now. The nurse at the front desk had pushed a clipboard across the counter, and Derek signed it without reading a single word. He signed it the way he signed everything, fast and careless, the pen barely touching the paper, his eyes already looking somewhere else. I called Patricia that morning. She answered on the 2nd ring. He signed as guarantor, I said. The hospital bill. $38,000. His name is on the form." Patricia was quiet for a moment. I could hear her typing on her keyboard. "Do you have the original admission paperwork?" she asked. "No." Derek handled everything that night. I was in the waiting room. "I will subpoena the hospital records," she said. "If Derek signed as guarantor, he is legally responsible for the balance. He cannot transfer that obligation to you or to the estate without a court order. And based on what we already have, no judge in Essex County will grant him that." She told me to scan the bill and send it to her office. Tommy drove me to the copy shop on Main Street, and the woman behind the counter helped me use the scanner because my fingers kept missing the buttons. She did not charge me. She said she knew Ruth from the library book club and that Ruth once helped her file her taxes for free. That was Ruth. Everywhere I turned, she had left a mark, a kindness, a favor, a small act of generosity that people remembered years later. The woman at the copy shop, the lobsterman who bought bait from her uncle's shop in Rockport, the children at Our Lady of Good Voyage who received new winter coats every December because Ruth organized the donation drive for 11 years straight. 2 weeks after the hospital bill arrived, I received a second letter. This one was not from the hospital. It was from Derek's lawyer, Garrett Whitfield. The letter was typed on cream-colored stationery with a gold letterhead. It said that Derek Callahan, as the sole heir of Ruth Callahan's estate, was requesting that all outstanding medical debts be transferred to the estate's liquid assets for immediate payment. It said that Arthur Callahan, as a non-titled resident of the property at 87 Eastern Point Road, had no legal standing to contest this action. I read the letter twice. The second time, I noticed something at the bottom, a paragraph that made my blood go cold. Furthermore, Mr. Callahan should be advised that continued occupation of any property associated with the estate, including but not limited to marine vessels registered under the decedent's name, may constitute trespassing and will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. He was threatening to have me arrested for living near my own boat. I called Patricia again. This time, she did not pause. "Forward the letter to me," she said. "Garrett Whitfield is overreaching, and he knows it. Derek is not the sole heir. He is not even the executor. Ruth named me as executor in the will. Whitfield has never seen the will, and he is operating on Derek's false assumption that no will exists." She explained the next steps slowly, the way she always did when she wanted me to understand every word. She would file a response to Whitfield's letter through the probate court. She would include a certified copy of Ruth's will, naming her as executor and me as primary beneficiary. She would attach the signature analysis proving Derek's power of attorney was forged, and she would request that the court formally reject Derek's claim as guarantor transferor. "What about the $38,000? I asked. "Derek signed it. Derek pays it. That is how a guarantor agreement works. He cannot pass his own legal obligation to the estate just because he regrets signing a piece of paper in a hospital lobby." I sat at the table after the call and stared at the two letters side by side. The hospital bill on the left, Whitfield's letter on the right. One was a number. The other was a threat. Together they told me something I already knew but had not yet said out loud. Derek was getting desperate. He had expected this to be easy. Walk into the house, change the locks, sell the property, take the money, leave the old man with nothing. He had not planned for Patricia. He had not planned for the will. He had not planned for Jamie and her recordings. And he certainly had not planned for Ruth, who had spent 12 years building a case against him with the patience of a woman who balanced books for a living and never once let a number slip. That evening, I walked down to the dock alone. The sun was setting behind the breakwater, turning the sky the color of rust and copper. The blue horizon sat in her slip, quiet and still, her hull dark against the fading light. I stood there for a long time with my hands in my pockets, one hand wrapped around Ruth's engagement ring and the other pressed flat against my thigh to keep it from shaking. A lobster boat came in through the channel, its engine low and steady. The captain waved. I waved back. The wake rocked the blue horizon gently, and the dock lines creaked against the cleats. I thought about what Patricia said. Derek signed it. Derek pays it. I thought about what Ruth wrote in her letter. I fought him my way. With numbers, with documents, with patience. And I thought about Father Daniel Reeves at Our Lady of Good Voyage, who had known Ruth for 20 years and never once heard her raise her voice. Tomorrow was Sunday. I had not been to church since the funeral, but something told me it was time to go back. I arrived at Our Lady of Good Voyage at 8:45 on Sunday morning. The parking lot was half full. A thin layer of frost covered the windshields, and the church steps were dusted with salt that the custodian had spread before dawn. I had not walked through those doors since the funeral, and my legs felt heavy as I climbed the 5 stone steps to the entrance. Father Daniel Reeves met me in the vestibule. He shook my hand with both of his and held it for a long time. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say God had a plan. He just looked at me and said, "It is good to see you, Arthur." And I believed him. I sat in the back pew, the same one Ruth and I always chose because she liked being near the door in case she needed to step out for air. The wood was smooth and cool beneath my palms. The stained glass window above the altar threw colored light across the floor in long rectangles of blue and gold. I closed my eyes during the opening hymn and listened to the voices around me, and for a moment I could hear Ruth's voice among them. She always sang slightly off-key, and she never cared. After the service, I stood in the courtyard with a paper cup of coffee, watching the congregation file out in small groups. Captain Sal Marino nodded at me from across the yard. Tommy was not there. He had not been to church in 6 years, not since Ellen's funeral, and I did not blame him. Then I saw her. Nora. She was standing near the iron gate at the edge of the courtyard, her coat buttoned to the chin, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Her husband Ben stood a few feet behind her, talking to another man I did not recognize. Nora's eyes found mine across the crowd, and for a moment neither of us moved. Nora was my daughter, 41 years old. She lived in Rockport, 12 miles north, with Ben and their 2 boys. She worked as a nurse at the Cape Ann Medical Center and volunteered at the food pantry on the 2nd Saturday of every month. She had Ruth's eyes, dark brown, steady, the kind of eyes that saw everything and said nothing until the right moment. We had not spoken since the funeral. At the service, she sat 3 rows behind Derek and did not look at me once. I thought she had chosen his side. I thought I had lost both of my children the same week I lost my wife. She walked toward me. Her steps were slow and deliberate, the way people walk when they are carrying something they are afraid to drop. She stopped 2 feet in front of me and looked at my face. Her eyes were red. "Dad," she said, "can we talk?" We sat on a bench behind the church, near the garden where Ruth used to plant marigolds every spring for the parish flower sale. The soil was frozen and bare now. A sparrow sat on the edge of the birdbath, pecking at the ice. Nora spoke first. She said she was sorry. She said she had been afraid. She said Derek called her the night of the funeral and told her that if she sided with me, he would make sure she never saw a dollar from the estate. He told her I was senile. He told her the Parkinson's had affected my mind. He told her I had no legal standing and no claim to anything Ruth left behind. I believed him, Nora said. Her voice was steady but thin, like a thread pulled tight. For about 2 weeks, I believed him. Then I started thinking about Mom, about the way she kept records, about the way she planned everything. And I knew there was no way she left this world without making sure you were taken care of. She told me she drove to Boston on her own. She found Patricia Harmon's office through a Google search after remembering a conversation she overheard between Ruth and someone named Patricia on the phone 3 years ago. She sat in the waiting room for 40 minutes before Patricia agreed to see her. Patricia told her nothing about the will. She said she could not disclose the contents to anyone other than the named executor and beneficiaries. But she did say one thing. She told me to trust my mother, Nora said. She said Mom had spent a very long time making sure the right people were protected. Nora looked at me. A tear ran down her left cheek, and she wiped it with the back of her hand. I should have come to you sooner, she said. I should have been at the dock the day after the funeral. I should have helped you carry those boxes. I put my hand on her arm. My fingers trembled against her coat sleeve. The sparrow on the birdbath flew away, and the courtyard was quiet, except for the distant sound of cars on the road. You are here now, I said. That is what matters. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It was a handwritten list of dates and amounts. At the top she had written, "Money Derek borrowed from Ben and me." The list had 9 entries. The first was from 2016, $2,000 for car repairs. The second was from 2017, $3,500 for a security deposit on an apartment Brooke wanted. The third was from 2018, $5,000 for what Derek called a business opportunity that never existed. The numbers continued down the page. The total at the bottom, circled in red ink, was $22,700. He never paid back a single dollar, Nora said. Not one. And every time I asked, he told me I was being selfish. I looked at the list. Ruth's ledger had recorded Derek's debts to us. Now Nora's list added another $22,700 to the total. Together, the evidence was mounting like snow on a rooftop. At some point, the weight would bring the whole structure down. Can I give this to Patricia? I asked. I already did, Nora said. I mailed her a copy last week. I kept the original for myself. She paused. She looked at the frozen garden and the empty birdbath and the gray sky above the church steeple. Dad, I want you to know something. I am not doing this for the money. I do not care about the estate. I care about you. And I care about Jamie. Derek told Brooke that Jamie does not matter. I heard him say it, and that was the moment I knew exactly who my brother had become. I nodded. I could not speak. The tremor in my left hand was worse than usual, and I pressed it against my knee to hold it still. Nora reached over and placed her hand on top of mine. Her palm was warm. Her grip was firm. We are going to get through this, she said. Mom made sure of it. We sat on that bench for a long time. The courtyard emptied. Ben waited by the car without saying a word. Father Reeves locked the church doors and waved to us from the steps. The sky stayed gray. But somewhere behind the clouds, the sun was there. The way it always is, even when you cannot see it. When I finally stood up, Nora hugged me. She held on tight, the way she used to hold on when she was 5 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. I wrapped my arms around her and felt her shoulders shake once, then go still. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me, she said. Thank Mom. Tommy woke me at 4 a.m. on March 15th. He did not knock. He pushed the door open and stood in the frame with his boots already on and his coat zipped to his throat. The dock office was pitch dark except for the glow of the space heater. I could see his face in the orange light, and I knew something was wrong before he said a word. Somebody hit the blue horizon, he said. I pulled on my boots and my coat and followed him down the dock road. The air was raw and wet, the kind of cold that goes straight through your clothes and sits on your bones. A fog had rolled in from the outer harbor, thick and gray, muffling every sound except our footsteps on the wooden planks. The tide was low. The boats in the slip sat heavy on their lines, their hulls dark and still. We reached the 4th slip on the east side, and I stopped. The tarp that covered the wheelhouse had been torn off and thrown into the water, where it floated like a dead thing between the pilings. The cabin door was open. The padlock I had bought 2 weeks ago lay on the deck, cut clean through with bolt cutters. I could see the sheared metal shining in the dock light. I climbed aboard. My hands were shaking, and not just from the Parkinson's. The cabin had been ransacked. The bench cushions were slashed open, their foam spilling out like yellow guts. The small table was overturned. Charts and maps that had hung on the wall for 30 years were ripped down and scattered across the floor. The radio was smashed. Someone had taken a hammer or a crowbar to it, and the pieces lay in a pile of black plastic and twisted wire. I went to the helm console. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the bottom edge. The hidden panel was still closed. The latch was still flush with the wood. Whoever did this did not find the safe. They did not know where to look, but they had left something behind. On the outside of the wheelhouse, sprayed in red paint across the white fiberglass, was a single word: thief. The letters were tall and jagged, each one nearly 2 feet high. The paint had dripped down the hull in long red streaks that looked like blood in the fog. Tommy stood on the dock and stared at it. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and took photographs from 4 different angles. He photographed the cut padlock, the torn tarp, the smashed radio, the slashed cushions, and the word on the hull. He did it calmly, methodically, the way a man does when he has seen enough bad weather to know that panic does not fix anything. "I am calling the police," he said. Officer Maria Souza arrived at 5:20. She was young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back under her cap. She took Tommy's statement first, then mine. I told her the boat was jointly titled. I told her my son had filed a motion to seize it. I told her we were in the middle of a probate dispute. She wrote everything down in a small notebook and asked if I had any idea who might have done this. I did not say Derek's name. I did not have to. She looked at the word on the hull and then looked at me. And something passed between us that did not need words. She called a detective. A man named Paul Carvalho arrived an hour later in an unmarked gray sedan. He was older than Souza, mid-50s, with a thick mustache and hands that looked like they had done real work before they started holding a badge. He examined the padlock, the paint, the damage inside the cabin. He took his own photographs. He asked me if there were security cameras at the marina. "One," Tommy said. "On the fuel dock. It covers the main pier, and about half the east slips." Carvalho nodded. "I will need that footage." Tommy walked him to the dock office and pulled up the security system on his desktop computer. The camera was old, black and white, grainy, but it was enough. At 2:17 in the morning, a figure appeared at the top of the main pier. Male, medium build, dark hoodie, the hood pulled up. He walked quickly down the east side, stopped at the 4th slip, and climbed aboard the Blue Horizon. He was on the boat for 11 minutes. At 2:28, he climbed off and walked back up the pier. At the edge of the frame, just before he disappeared into the fog, he turned his head slightly to the left. The camera caught the side of his face for less than 2 seconds. It was not Derek. The build was wrong. Derek was taller and heavier. This man was lean, shorter, with a quick, nervous stride. "Hired," Tommy said quietly, standing behind Carvalho. Carvalho did not respond. He saved the footage to a flash drive and put it in his coat pocket. He gave me his card. "Detective Paul Carvalho, Gloucester Police Department, Criminal Investigations Division." He told me to call if anything else happened, and he told me not to touch anything on the boat until the forensic team had a chance to process the scene. I called Patricia at 8 that morning. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said 3 things. First, "I am adding this to the case file: vandalism, destruction of property, and intimidation. Second, I am requesting an emergency protective order for the Blue Horizon, and for you personally. Third, I want you to know that this changes nothing about our strategy. Derek is trying to scare you into giving up. That means he is running out of options." I hung up and walked back down to the dock. The fog had thinned. A pale sun pushed through the clouds, and the harbor water turned from black to gray to a dull, cold silver. The blue horizon sat in her slip with that red word still screaming across her hull. Thief. The paint was dry now, hard and permanent, as if someone had branded her. I stood on the dock and looked at my boat, the boat I built with my own hands, the boat where I proposed to Ruth 43 years ago, the boat where she hid a steel safe full of truth. I thought about what Patricia said. He is running out of options. I thought about what Ruth wrote. I fought him my way, and I made a promise to the blue horizon, the same way I once made a promise to Ruth on her deck under the Thatcher Island lighthouses. I said it out loud, just above a whisper, so only the gulls and the tide could hear. Nobody is taking you from me. The will reading was set for June 20th. Patricia had confirmed the date in April, and I marked it on the calendar Tommy kept pinned to the wall above the dock office phone. A Thursday. 10 in the morning. Harrison and Cole Law Office, Atlantic Avenue, Boston. I circled the date with a red pen and stared at it every morning when I poured my coffee. The weeks between March and June passed in a strange, uneven rhythm. Some days moved slowly, thick and heavy like fog on the harbor. Others rushed past, like the tide pulling out before a storm. Patricia filed the counter motion on the boat in late March. The court granted a temporary protective order on April 3rd, which meant Derek could not sell, transfer, or remove the Blue Horizon until probate was resolved. Detective Carvalho identified the man on the security footage as a laborer from Salem named Vincent Tello. Tello was brought in for questioning but refused to name who hired him. Carvalho told me he suspected Derek but could not prove it yet. I repaired the Blue Horizon myself. It took 3 weeks. Tommy helped with the heavy lifting. Captain Sal donated a marine radio from a retired trawler he kept in dry dock behind his house. I sanded and repainted the hull where the red letters had been, 3 coats of white marine enamel, and when I was finished, you could not see the word anymore. But I knew it was there, underneath the paint, underneath the fiberglass. The ghost of that word still lived in the grain. Nora came to the dock every Saturday. She brought lunch, sandwiches from the deli on Bearskin Neck, and lemonade she made herself with too much sugar, exactly the way Ruth used to make it. We did not talk about the case much. She told me about her boys, about Ben's job at the water treatment plant, about a patient at the medical center who reminded her of Ruth because the woman kept a ledger of every meal she ate for 40 years. We laughed at that. It was the first time I had laughed since December. Jamie sent 2 more recordings to Patricia in April. One was a phone call between Derek and a real estate agent discussing the house listing. The other was Derek telling Brooke he planned to contest any will that surfaced because, in his words, the old man probably forged it himself. Patricia added both to the file without comment. The case was growing thicker by the week. Then came June 17th. 3 days before the reading, I was walking back to the dock office from Pete's Seafood Shack on Rogers Street. It was early evening, maybe 6:30. The sun was low and golden over the harbor, and the air smelled like fried clams and salt water. I had a paper bag with 2 fish sandwiches, one for me and one for Tommy. I was thinking about nothing in particular. Maybe about the reading. Maybe about Ruth. Maybe about the way the light looked on the water and how she would have stopped to watch it. I did not hear him coming. He grabbed me from behind. A hand on my shoulder, hard and sudden, spinning me around. The paper bag fell to the sidewalk. The fish sandwiches spilled onto the concrete. I stumbled backward and caught myself against a parked truck. Derek stood in front of me. His face was red. His eyes were glassy and wild, the way they looked when he had been drinking for hours. He wore a wrinkled dress shirt untucked over jeans, and his hair was unwashed and pushed to one side. He smelled like whiskey and sweat and something sour underneath, like a man who had stopped caring what the world thought of him. "You think you are smart?" he said. His voice was loud. A couple walking on the other side of the street turned to look. "You think you can hire some lawyer in Boston and steal what is mine?" I did not move. My back was flat against the truck. My left hand trembled at my side. My right hand gripped the edge of the truck bed to keep me steady. "Derek," I said. "This is not the place. There is no place," he shouted. "There is no place for you. You have nothing. You are nothing. You are a 70-year-old man with shaking hands living in a room above a dock. Mom is dead. The house is mine. The money is mine. And that piece of junk boat you love so much is going to the scrapyard the minute probate closes." He stepped closer. I could feel his breath on my face. Hot and sharp and smelling of bourbon. "I know about the lawyer," he said. Lower now. "Garrett told me someone filed a counter motion. Someone submitted recordings." "Recordings, Dad? You had my own daughter spy on me." His hand came up fast. Not a fist. An open palm. He shoved me hard in the chest, and I fell backward against the truck. My head hit the side mirror, and a bright white flash exploded behind my eyes. I slid down to the sidewalk and sat there with my back against the tire, my vision blurred, my ears ringing. Derek stood over me. His fists were clenched at his sides. For a moment, I thought he was going to hit me again. His jaw was tight, and his whole body was shaking, not from cold, not from fear, but from something darker, something that had been building inside him for months, maybe years, maybe his whole life. Then a voice, loud and clear and sharp as a foghorn. "Step away from him. Right now." Captain Sal Marino stood on the sidewalk 10 feet behind Derek. He was 80 years old, 5'6", 150 pounds. He had a phone in one hand and a cane in the other, and he held both like weapons. His eyes were locked on Derek, and his voice did not waver. I said, "Step away. The police are on the way. I have been on the phone with them since you grabbed him." Derek turned. He looked at Sal. He looked at the phone. He looked back at me sitting on the sidewalk with blood on the back of my head. And something in his face changed. Not remorse. Not shame. Something closer to calculation. The look of a man measuring the distance between himself and a consequence. He stepped back. He pointed at me with one finger. "Thursday," he said. "I will be there Thursday. And when that will says exactly what I think it says, you are done." He turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed down Rogers Street until they faded into the sound of the harbor and the gulls and the distant hum of a boat engine coming in through the channel. Sal helped me to my feet. My head was bleeding where it hit the mirror. He pressed a handkerchief against the cut and held it there while we waited for the ambulance. Officer Souza arrived first. She took my statement and Sal's statement and photographed the cut on my head and the fish sandwiches on the sidewalk. She asked if I wanted to press charges. "Yes," I said. She nodded and wrote it down. The paramedics arrived and cleaned the wound. 4 stitches. They wanted me to go to the hospital for a scan, but I refused. I had been in that hospital too many times already. Tommy arrived 20 minutes later. He looked at the bandage on my head and the blood on my collar and did not ask what happened. He already knew. 3 days, he said. 3 days, I said. We walked back to the dock in silence. The sun had gone down. The harbor was dark and still. Somewhere on the water, a buoy bell rang twice, slow and steady, counting down the hours. June 20th, 2024. Thursday. 10 in the morning. I wore the only suit I still owned. A dark navy blue 2-button bought in 1998 for Nora's high school graduation. Ruth had picked it out at a department store in Peabody. She said navy made my eyes look honest. The jacket was tight across the shoulders now, and the pants needed a belt I did not have, so Tommy lent me one. Black leather, too long, the extra length tucked under itself. I looked at my reflection in the dock office window and saw an old man in a borrowed belt with a bandage still showing above his left ear. Tommy drove me to Boston. We did not take the highway. He went the coast road through Rockport and Manchester by the Sea and Beverly. And the ocean followed us the whole way. Blue and flat and calm, as if the water knew what was coming and had decided to be still. We arrived at the Harrison and Cole Law Office on Atlantic Avenue at 9:32. The building was old brick, 6 stories, with a brass plaque by the front door. Patricia met us in the lobby. She wore a charcoal gray suit and carried a leather briefcase and a white banker's box. She shook my hand and then Tommy's. Her grip was firm. Her eyes were steady. "Everyone is upstairs," she said. "Conference room B. 3rd floor." The elevator was small and slow. I watched the numbers light up. 1, 2, 3. The doors opened onto a carpeted hallway with framed photographs of Boston Harbor on the walls. Patricia led us to a set of double doors at the end of the hall. She stopped, turned to me, and said, "Arthur, whatever happens in this room, remember that Ruth planned every detail. Trust her." I nodded. She opened the doors. The conference room was larger than I expected. A long mahogany table ran down the center, surrounded by 12 leather chairs. At the far end, a flat-screen television was mounted on the wall. The curtains were open, and morning sunlight came through the windows in wide, warm columns. Derek sat on the left side of the table, 3 chairs from the end. He wore a black suit that looked new. His hair was combed. His face was clean-shaven, but pale, the color of a man who had not slept. Brooke sat next to him in a dark green dress, her hands folded on the table, her expression flat and careful. Beside them sat Garrett Whitfield, Derek's attorney, a thin man in a pinstripe suit with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather portfolio open in front of him. On the right side sat Nora and Ben. Nora wore a simple black dress, and her hands were in her lap. Ben sat upright beside her in a gray blazer. He nodded at me when I walked in. Nora did not nod. She looked at me with Ruth's dark eyes, and I understood everything she was not saying. At the head of the table sat a woman I had not seen before. Mid-60s. Silver hair pulled back in a bun. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Patricia introduced her as Judge Helen Aronson, retired, serving as the independent probate mediator appointed by the court, and then I saw Jamie. She sat in the corner of the room, near the window, in a wooden chair separate from the table. She wore jeans and a white blouse, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked older than 17. She looked like she had aged a year in the 6 months since I last saw her face to face. Her eyes met mine across the room, and she gave me the smallest nod. Just a dip of the chin, but it carried the weight of every phone call, every recording, every secret she had kept in a zippered pocket behind her math textbook. Derek saw me looking at Jamie. His jaw tightened. He turned to Whitfield and whispered something. Whitfield shook his head once. Patricia set the banker's box on the table and opened her briefcase. She pulled out a stack of documents, each one tabbed with colored flags. She arranged them in a row and then turned to Judge Aronson. "Your Honor, I am Patricia Harmon, executor of the last will and testament of Ruth Eleanor Callahan, deceased December 12, 2023. I have the original notarized will, supporting documentation, and a recorded video statement prepared by the decedent. I would like to begin with the video, per Mrs. Callahan's written instructions." Judge Aronson nodded. "Proceed." Patricia picked up a remote control and pointed it at the television. The screen turned blue for a moment. Then, Ruth appeared. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes your heartbeat sound louder than it should. Ruth was sitting at the kitchen table in our house. 87 Eastern Point Road. I recognized the wallpaper behind her, the yellow and white pattern she chose in 2003. I recognized the coffee mug on the table, the blue one with the chipped handle that she refused to throw away. She wore a cream-colored sweater, and her reading glasses pushed up on her head. Her hair was silver and short, the way she kept it in her last years. She looked directly into the camera with those dark brown eyes, and she smiled. The date stamp in the lower corner read September 14th, 2022. 15 months before she died. "Hello," she said. "My name is Ruth Eleanor Callahan. I am 67 years old. I am of sound mind and clear judgment. And if you are watching this, it means I am gone." She paused. She folded her hands on the table, the same way she folded them when she balanced the books at the end of every month. "I have spent the last 11 years preparing for this moment. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. What I am about to say will be difficult for some of you to hear. But every word is true, every number is documented, and every decision I made was made with love. Even the ones that do not feel like love right now." She looked directly into the camera, directly at me. Across time, across death, across everything that had happened since she closed her eyes in room 4 of Addison Gilbert Hospital. "Art," she said, "I need you to listen." I gripped the arms of my chair. My hands were shaking. Tears ran down my face, and I did not wipe them. Tommy sat beside me with his hand on my back. Nora pressed her fist against her mouth. Derek stared at the screen without blinking. And for the first time since December, I saw something in his face that was not anger or greed or calculation. It was fear. Ruth spoke for 11 minutes. I know because the timestamp on the video counted every second, and I watched it the way a drowning man watches the surface of the water. Every word she said pulled me closer to air. She began with Derek. "Derek," she said. She looked into the camera, and her voice was calm. Not cold, not angry. Calm, the way a doctor sounds when delivering news that cannot be undone. "I have loved you since the moment you were born. I held you in the hospital and counted your fingers and promised you the world. But love does not mean blindness. And a mother's job is not to protect her children from consequences. It is to make sure the consequences are fair." She listed the debts. Every single one. She read them from a ledger that sat open on the kitchen table, the same brown leather ledger I had found in the cardboard box. She started with the first loan in 2011, $12,000 from Marina Supply Company. She read the date, the amount, and the purpose Derek gave when he asked for the money. Then the second. Then the third. 13 loans over 12 years. She read each one without pausing, without emotion, the way she read every balance sheet she ever prepared in 31 years of bookkeeping. The total was $73,800. Not $1 repaid. Derek sat motionless in his chair. Brooke's hand was on his arm. Whitfield had stopped writing. Ruth continued. She explained the forged power of attorney. She held up a document to the camera and said, "This is a power of attorney, dated March 7th, 2023, bearing my signature. I did not sign this document. I have never seen this document." A forensic handwriting analyst named Dr. Eleanor Voss of Cambridge, Massachusetts, has examined the signature and confirmed it is a forgery. Her report is included in my estate file. She set the document down and looked at the camera again. "Now I will tell you what I built. And for whom." Patricia paused the video. She stood and opened the banker's box. She removed 5 sealed envelopes, each one labeled in Ruth's handwriting. She placed them in a row on the table. Then she turned to Judge Aronson. "Your Honor, I will now read the distribution as stated in Mrs. Callahan's notarized will, executed on October 3rd, 2022, witnessed by myself and my associate, Martin Chua." Judge Aronson nodded. The room was so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning humming in the ceiling. Patricia opened the first envelope. "To my husband, Arthur Raymond Callahan. The house at 87 Eastern Point Road, Gloucester, Massachusetts. Appraised value $700,000. Deed to be transferred to his name immediately upon probate approval. Life insurance policy. Primary beneficiary. $400,000. Savings account at Rockport Savings Bank. $220,000. Investment portfolio, managed by Callahan Asset Trust, Cambridge, Massachusetts, $180,000. The fishing vessel Blue Horizon, registered in Gloucester, full title and ownership. Total estimated value, $1,500,000. I heard the number, But it did not land. It floated somewhere above me, disconnected from anything real. I was still seeing Ruth's face on the screen, still hearing her voice. The money was just numbers. The voice was everything. Patricia opened the second envelope. To my daughter, Nora Callahan Harris. $100,000 in cash. To be drawn from the estate's liquid assets. My complete jewelry collection, including the pearl necklace given to me by my mother, Eleanor Shaw, in 1978. The 2019 Honda Accord, currently registered in my name, and a personal letter, sealed, to be opened privately. Nora closed her eyes. Ben put his arm around her shoulders. She did not cry. She pressed her lips together and nodded once. The same small nod Jamie had given me when I walked into the room. Patricia opened the third envelope. To my granddaughter, Jamie Ruth Callahan. A trust fund of $100,000, to be held and managed by Patricia Harmon as trustee until Jamie reaches the age of 18, at which time full access will be granted for the purpose of education, vocational training, or small business investment, and a sealed letter, to be read aloud at this proceeding, if Jamie chooses. Jamie looked at Patricia. Her eyes were wide and bright. She nodded. Patricia opened the fourth envelope. The room shifted. I felt it. The air pressure changed the way it changes on the water, right before a squall hits. Every person at that table turned slightly toward Derek, and the silence grew a new edge. To my son, Derek Robert Callahan. Derek leaned forward. His hands were flat on the table. His knuckles were white. $10,000 in cash. And a sealed letter, to be opened now. $10,000. Out of an estate worth more than $1,800,000. $10,000. Patricia removed a single white envelope from the box. She slid it across the table to Derek. He stared at it. He did not touch it. His face had gone from pale to gray, the color of the January sky the morning I drove to the hospital. Open it, Judge Aronson said. Derek picked up the envelope. His hands were shaking. He tore it open and unfolded a single sheet of paper. I could not see the words from where I sat, but I watched his eyes move across the page, left to right, top to bottom. His lips parted slightly. His breathing changed. Then Patricia pressed play on the video. Ruth appeared on screen again. She looked directly into the camera, and this time her voice was not calm. It was something deeper, something that lived between sadness and resolve. The way the ocean looks in that moment, between high tide and the turn. Derek, she said, I gave you $10,000 because it is the exact amount you gave your father when you threw his life into 3 cardboard boxes and left them in the snow. You offered him $300 for a motel room. I multiplied it. I was always generous with you. Even now. She paused. She took off her reading glasses and set them on the table. The letter explains everything I could not say to your face. I hope you read it. I hope you understand it. And I hope, someday, you find a way to become the man your father always believed you could be. Because he never stopped believing in you, Derek. Even when I did. The screen went black. Derek stared at the dark television. His mouth was open. No sound came out. Whitfield reached for his arm, but Derek pulled away. He stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. He took one step backward, then another. His hand went to his chest. His face twisted, and his knees buckled, and he collapsed sideways against the wall and slid to the floor. Brooke screamed. Whitfield jumped to his feet. Judge Aronson called for someone to dial 911. Patricia moved quickly around the table and knelt beside Derek. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck and looked at her watch. His pulse is rapid but present, she said. He is conscious. Give him air. Nora stood and walked to where Derek lay. She looked down at her brother, crumpled against the wall in his new black suit, his face wet with sweat, his eyes wide and unfocused. She did not kneel. She did not touch him. She stood there for a long moment, and then she turned and walked back to her chair and sat down beside Ben. Tommy leaned toward me and whispered, "Ruth got him." I did not answer. I was looking at the television screen. It was dark now, just black glass, reflecting the conference room, and the morning light, and all of us sitting around that long mahogany table. But I could still see her. In the glass, in the light, in everything. The paramedics took Derek out on a stretcher. He was conscious but silent, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, his hands flat at his sides. Brooke followed the stretcher into the hallway without looking back. Whitfield gathered his papers, closed his leather portfolio, and stood. He turned to Judge Aronson and said 5 words. "I am withdrawing from representation." The door closed behind him. The sound of the latch was small and final, like the last note of a song no one wanted to hear again. The room was still. Patricia stood at the head of the table with her hands on the banker's box. Tommy sat beside me with his arms crossed. Nora held Ben's hand, and Jamie remained in her chair by the window, the morning light falling across her face in a way that made her look exactly like Ruth at 17. Patricia turned to Jamie. "Your grandmother left a sealed letter for you with instructions that it may be read aloud at this proceeding if you choose. This is entirely your decision." Jamie walked to the table. She took the envelope and opened it. 2 pages of lined paper. She looked around the room. At me. At Nora. At Tommy. Then she began to read. "My dearest Jamie, if you are reading this in a room full of people, then you have already been braver than I ever asked you to be. I want you to know that I see you. I have always seen you. Even when the world around you felt loud and unfair, I saw the girl who sat on my porch and asked questions about the stars and the tides and the names of every bird on the railing. Her voice trembled but did not break. I set aside $100,000 for your future. Not because money can replace what you have lost, but because I want you to have choices. Your grandfather built boats with his hands. I built numbers with mine. You will build something entirely your own. I do not know what it will be, but I know it will be extraordinary. Because you are extraordinary." She took a breath. Her eyes were wet, but her hands were steady. "There is one more thing. Your grandfather is the finest man I have ever known. He is stubborn and proud and terrible at folding laundry. And he once burned an entire Thanksgiving turkey because he fell asleep watching a football game. But he loved me every single day for 43 years, without condition and without hesitation. Take care of him, Jamie. He will pretend he does not need it. He does." Jamie folded the letter and pressed it against her chest. She walked to my chair and put her arms around my neck. I wrapped my arms around her and felt her tears on my collar. The room disappeared. The table, the chairs, the documents, the television screen. All of it faded until there was nothing left except my granddaughter and Ruth's words still hanging in the air like lavender. Judge Aronson spoke after a few minutes. "The will of Ruth Eleanor Callahan has been read in full. The distribution is clear. Unless there are objections from any party present, this matter is resolved." No one spoke. The matter was resolved. In the lobby, Patricia shook my hand one last time. "Ruth would be proud of you, Arthur." "Ruth did all the work," I said. She smiled. The first time I had seen her smile since January. "She told me you would say that." We drove home the coast road. Tommy and I in the front. Jamie sat in the passenger seat with her letter in her lap and Ruth's engagement ring on a chain around her neck. I had given it to her in the lobby. She held it against her collarbone and watched the ocean through the window. We passed through Manchester by the Sea and Rockport, and the long curve of shoreline where the road runs so close to the water you can taste the salt through the vents. The sun was high. The harbor sparkled, and somewhere past the breakwater, the blue horizon waited in her slip. I moved back into 87 Eastern Point Road on July 1st. The locks had been changed again, this time by a locksmith Nora hired, and the keys were mine. I walked through the front door and stood in the hallway, and breathed in the smell of the house. Wood polish, old books, and something faint and sweet underneath. Lavender. Ruth had hung dried lavender in every closet. After 43 years, the scent had soaked into the walls. I spent the summer fixing things. The loose railing on the porch, the cracked window upstairs, the kitchen faucet that dripped since 2019. I worked slowly because of the Parkinson's. But I worked every day. And each repair felt like a conversation with Ruth. In August, I took the Blue Horizon out for the first time since she died. Tommy came with me. We anchored off Thatcher Island, in the same spot where I proposed in 1981. The sun went down behind the twin lighthouses, painting the clouds in copper and rose and deep orange. I sat on the deck and watched it disappear below the horizon. Ruth was there. In the salt air, in the creak of the hull, in the lavender still clinging to the cabin hooks. In September, Nora helped me plant a garden. Marigolds along the fence, the way Ruth planted them for the church. And in the center, a single row of lavender. I knelt in the dirt and pressed the seedlings into the soil with my trembling hands, and I thought about the last line of Ruth's letter. The line I kept folded in my coat pocket for the rest of my life. When it is over, Art, plant something, anything, and watch it grow. That is how you will know I am still with you. The lavender bloomed in October, purple and bright, bending in the autumn wind, off Gloucester Harbor. I stood on the back porch with a cup of coffee and watched it sway. And for the first time in 10 months, I felt peace. If you have made it this far, thank you. This story is inspired by real events, though some names and details have been changed. If it moved you, I ask one thing: share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone fighting a battle they did not choose. Someone who feels alone. Someone who needs to know that love does not end when the person who gave it is gone. It survives. In letters, in ledgers, in lavender, in the people who carry it forward. My name is Arthur Callahan. I am 71 years old. I live in a house by the harbor that my wife saved for me. And every morning, I walk to the garden and check the lavender. And I know she is still here. Thank you for listening. God bless.